This is the 2025 State of the Food and Beverage Business Industry presented by Food Liability Insurance Program, or FLIP, as you might know it. My name is Kyle Porter. I'll be hosting today and introducing some of our panelists here shortly. Today, we're going to be reviewing some very interesting findings from our 2025 Food and Beverage Industry Economic Trends Report produced by FLIP. This is actually our second annual report where we analyze some key insurance data from the past year, along with economic trends, as well as we surveyed a bunch of our business operators and insured and some consumers to provide some perspectives on the food industry as we head into 2025. You can find the full report on the FLIP website. But today we're going to break down some of the most important findings and discuss what they might mean for you and your business. We're joined today by two representatives of FLIP, Mr. Clint Bishop, who's the Vice President of Marketing for FLIP.
Yeah, my name is Clint Bishop. I've been in marketing for 20 years. About the last 5.5 of them have been with FLIP, and it's just been an incredible ride. As a marketer, you never want to feel like you're putting lipstick on a pig. And I don't feel like that with FLIP. It's a tremendous product. We have tremendous customers, and this place has been great to work for and great to be at. So thanks for the welcome.
And the insurance experts joining the panel and program manager of FLIP, Mr. Kyle Jude.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. I have been in the insurance industry for over a decade and joined the FLIP team about a year ago. And I just want to say it's been a wonderful product to work on, and being able to make sure that all of our customers have the insurance that they need to fit their needs.
Again, we've compiled this report just to give business owners kind of just some tips, tricks, and statistics on how the food business is going. So I guess jumping over to Clint, why don't you give us a rundown of just the overall industry? What did we find from an industry perspective on the economics, and how's it looking?
If I painted it with a broad brush, I would say it is a cautiously optimistic, maybe a guarded optimism that kind of paints the full picture. Overall, let's talk about growth. So across all industries, we're seeing about 6% year-over-year growth, just a hair over for the food and bev industry as a whole. It's not all to that degree though. So I want to break down the categories so that you understand, am I in a high growth category or industry or niche, or am I in a slow or low growth category? So let's cover the top ones first. So top three, you have food trucks, pet bakeries, and farmers markets. So the very high watermark was set by food trucks at almost just a hair under 16% growth year over year. I keep waiting for the day when the brakes get pumped on food trucks, and no pun intended, but it hasn't happened yet. It really is kind of a runaway segment. Second to that is pet bakeries. We're seeing a lot more of these pop up, specializing in pet treats and pet food and whatnot. This was nearly 12% year-over-year growth, so this is also spiking in demand. The last double-digit one that we have in that top three is farmers market food vendors at about 10.5% growth. We don't have the final number yet on the mobile bartending. We're probably estimating or expecting it to be about 6% growth year over year, which is very close to the average for all the categories we're talking about. And then your laggards, kind of your bottom three, are 5.7% growth for personal chefs, about 1.5 points for bakers, including at-home bakers, cottage food people, and about 1.5% for caterers. We did see a bigger uptick in caterers last year, so this might just be a leveling off period. But yeah, overall, we're at 6%. The good news is none of these categories are negative growth, and there's a good reason for that. We'll talk about the consumer behaviors here in a second. But yeah, overall, just really good growth across the board and positive, which we want for you guys and we want for ourselves as well. In terms of momentum, we're going to carry some of that forwards. Almost 80%, 4 in 5 of you are feeling like your businesses are going to grow in 2025. In our survey, what we found is a little over half, 52%, reported that they did grow in 2024. So there's a reason to be optimistic, and that about half of people did grow their business. But yeah, in terms of footprint, a lot of those who do feel like they're going to grow in 2025, that 80% number, only about 35% are feeling like it'll be a physical expansion. So it may not be growth that requires them to add a trailer or add a food truck or expand into more markets or something like that. They might grow just by virtue of what they're already doing right now operationally. In terms of other reasons to be optimistic, and I talked about the consumer behaviors, very, very positive data back. In 2024, Americans spent more than half of their food budget was on eating out, essentially, either takeaway or dine-in options. This is an all-time high at about 56% of their budget for food. The average monthly spend also went up, which we love to see as food business operators. And it went up considerably, about 15% year over year. So it just continues to grow. I mean, we're nearing the $200 a month mark in terms of out of house spend by consumers. So those trends continue, and I don't really see those slowing down anytime soon. About 60% of our survey respondents said they eat out on a weekly basis. If you take that to a 2 to 3 times basis, that number goes up to about 82% between the two. So it's a regular habit, and it's a habit that I don't see people breaking anytime soon. And then in terms of that same response, we have about 70% of customers who plan to keep the same dining habits, and 18% plan to eat out more. So it feels like it's either going to be homeostasis or something positive for the industry in general. Those are reasons to be optimistic, but let's talk about some of the cautions or maybe the question marks that are happening. We all recognize that food prices were a significant challenge for 2025. About 42% of our food business owners cite rising costs as the top challenge in 2025. And of course, as expensive as it can be to start a business, buy insurance, get equipment, pay venue fees and whatever else, hire employees. Really operationally, we keep an eye on the two major cost factors on these businesses, which is the labor cost and the food cost. So combined, these are where everyone's eyes are kind of looking and curious about where they're going to go. About 2/3 of our business owners are anticipating our food costs to continue to rise. There's reason to be a little bit cautious about that. Personal opinion would be that the labor market and the cost of labor is probably going to slow a little bit faster than the food costs. I think the food costs, there are some environmental question marks. What's funny about this is, as optimistic as our Flip customers and survey respondents are feeling, the USDA is incredibly optimistic because they came out and made a prediction that there would only be a 2% increase in food prices this year. And there's a lot of ways we could critique their calculations. And if you're familiar with consumer price index and basket of goods and how that's calculated, there are holes to be poked in that. But I think that there's some questions about what's going to happen with food prices, namely as a knock-on impact of tariffs or potential tariffs, and if there's any retaliatory measures taken by other countries. And then, of course, you've got avian bird flu and egg shortages, and that'll, of course, impact food production, and food production costs rising increases food ticket costs as well. Overall, I think labor is going to slow down a little bit quicker than the food prices will. The food prices, however, are proving to slow down a little bit relative to most of 2024. We'll wait and see what's going to happen in terms of retaliatory tariffs or avian flu, egg shortage, and just what the overall food pricing is going to do. In terms of the labor cost, the average hourly wage for food workers is up marginally from about $17 an hour last year to almost 18 this year. But some businesses are trying to just adjust to some of the struggle. Obviously, in an inflationary period, you kind of have to decide what you're going to do. Are we going to adjust ticket prices in order to account for that? Or are we going to try and deal with the squeeze? Are we going to move ingredients or solutions to try and bring costs down? I'll say business owners were pretty split in terms of their ability to adjust menu prices last year to reflect that change in food costs. Nearly half, about 45%, were unable to keep up with inflation, which is obviously a huge concern when you're talking about a business that's usually fairly low margin. Really interestingly, though, last year, our operators believed that their ticket prices would increase 91%. So it's like almost everybody virtually believe that the ticket prices increased, and they really did. However, for 2025, there's only about half of our respondents feel like the ticket prices will continue to increase. So I do think we'll see that a little bit, but certainly not on the level that we've seen it in the last couple of years. Nearly half of our respondents feel like they're not planning on making major changes to their menus, but overall, where their concern really tends to be is on the overall profit margins. So in terms of profit margins, our survey found that about 60% of operators believe their margins will be somewhere south of 10%, which is pretty in line with the industry average between 3 and 5%, where we have about 40% feeling more optimistic, targeting somewhere north of 10% margin. That's pretty in line with the overall positive sentiment we feel from operators. But obviously, in order to hit that, we've got to mind the bottom line, and we obviously have to have a really close eye on food costs and labor costs to make sure that we have a decent margin and we can continue to do what we love.
Sounds like the takeaway is, like you said, cautious optimism, but actually leading
Yes.
more towards optimism, which was
Yeah, more so than last year for sure.
I remember doing that last year, this exercise, and a lot of people were really concerned about those, but a lot of the respondents this year said, look, I feel positive. It seems like things are stabilizing. Obviously, we've got some new macro environmental things that Clint mentioned, and we'll be curious in watching those closely, how that's affecting food prices across the board. But I'm happy to hear some of these costs are stabilizing, and that over 50% of respondents said they had a really great year and their businesses grew. So, and that 90% or something like that say they will again.
Yeah.
So that's great. It was a lot of the data we came through surveying business owners, doing our own research, buying reports, etc. New to the report this year was we actually went out to consumers to find out what they wanted in their dining preferences, to share that with you guys, to understand how you might be able to attract new customers and make menu adjustments, just kind of to hear what they're interested in from dining out. So we conducted a digital survey with over 500 respondents just to kind of understand their preferences. Maybe Kyle, Jude, thinking if you could run through some of those findings that you think our operators might find interesting.
As Clint mentioned, every metric that we analyze shows customers are eating out more. Per our survey, customers are eating out over 4.5 times per week, which is up from 3 times a week in 2023. That's what, the 33% increase. It's huge. And the majority of old diners, 65% eat it out at least once a week, no matter what. Along with this increase in frequency in dining out, our diners are also reported spending more per meal in 2024 than they did in 2023. In 2023, they were looking to spend, somewhere between $10 and $20 a meal. In 2024, 33% of our respondents have said that they'd be willing to spend over $30 a meal. But we are still seeing a 5% increase over 2023. And that would mean in total, the US market would exceed $1.5 trillion of out-of-home spending on food.
I thought this was very interesting in the research as well, that historically last year, people really only wanted to spend up to $20, and now they're open to spending up to $30. Yes, that was per person, per meal. And so that to me represents an opportunity. Maybe not feels great from a diner's perspective, that I probably eat out more than that 4.6 times per week category. But I can tell you, I easily will spend up to $30. And I think that being shown across the board allows food business owners to kind of have some flexibility in their pricing. And at least we're seeing that people are willing to do that.
And looking at which categories lead the market, fast casual has finally this year surpassed fast food as the largest out-of-home dining category. This is a change of the last few years, we believe, indicating diners are looking for a more quality meal when dining out. We believe this creates further opportunity for our small gig dining experience customers, such as food trucks, food trailers, food carts, vendors. This category ranks 6th most popular out of the out-of-home category in 2023. With further growth estimated in this category in 2024. About 30% of food business operators indicate tips remain the same in 2024 as they did in 2023, and only about 13% reported an increase, despite the increased labor and food costs. And this is especially true in the dining labeled as quick service, where average tip percentages were 15.9% compared to 18.8% in full service restaurants. And in fact, only 6% of customers surveyed indicate they were willing to tip over 20%, and 43% of those customers surveyed said they only tip between 10 and 15%, which is well below the common 20% for good service standard. So what are diners looking for when they're eating out? Our survey showed that taste and cost remain the most important aspects of the dining experience. The lack of emphasis on convenience was noted by customers willing to travel much further for a unique dining experience and wait longer for their food. More than 2/3 of diners reported that they were willing to drive over 10 to 20 miles for experiences and are willing to wait over 20 minutes for their meals without getting upset. Over 80% of our customers preferred to pay with a card or mobile payment other than cash. So that's a huge segment of the marketplace. Let's dive into what types of food and what types of cuisine we found the most popular among our surveys. Mexican food remains the fan favorite, with 28% of customers listing it as their favorite out-of-home cuisine type. Some of the other ones that come in fairly close are American food at 23%, Italian food at 18%, Asian food is 15%, and then we have some others out there that are pretty popular as well, Mediterranean at 8%, barbecue 6. 90% of our customers said that the ability to customize an order to taste or health preferences is very important. Stronger flavors also continue to gain steam in the eyes of customers. According to the National Restaurant Association's 2025 What's Hot forecast, it's okay to take risks when it comes to the flavor in 2025. For instance, honey and hot honey were both the top trending ingredient and condiment. The trend of localized options continued as well. Localization of menus are attracting younger diners, and added items like hyper-local condiments and ingredients, and of course, local beer and wine offerings definitely help to bolster that. While sustainability seems to remain, in the mind of younger diners and industry pros, consumers haven't really thought that it's that big of a deal. Our customer surveyed revealed that only 20% see sustainability as very important in selecting a place to dine, and 30% noted that it wasn't important at all, which is pretty interesting when you hear about sustainability and the news cycles and everything. But that said, health conscious menu items continue to be a top mind for diners, and food operators can capitalize on this trend, introducing healthier options and ingredients for their businesses.
We had two questions related. Some people are working with chocolate and other bakers, and they're working. Is there any trends that we're seeing in those? It goes back to that overall trend is they want to see other healthy options. We've seen across the board, those dark chocolates are really high on the dessert side using ingredients such as gluten-sensitive ingredients. But there's been a huge push towards the health conscious dessert eater that we'd like to share that with you.
Vegan options are also continue to rise in popularity among the health conscious eaters, as well as gluten sensitive offerings. We're seeing that this may not necessarily be a menu wide change, but having select offerings on your menu is becoming standard and expected in the eyes of consumers. Non-alcoholic beverages continue to explode in popularity with consumers. Our study found that in the US, the category saw an increase in consumption volume of 29% over 2023. That said, these offerings may require certain permits and insurance protections. So please do make sure that you look at your local ordinances when looking to add those offerings to your menu. All in all, spending and frequency are up with diners continue to demand flexibility of their choices, such as new menu items and customization.
Customization is key, it seems, that you can't be kind of set in your ways in your menu. And I think that's really important for operators to understand that in the day and age of online ordering, and the consumers just kind of expect customization, but also, stick to authenticity. We saw authenticity is really important. And I think that point you made, Kyle, you might think convenience is like key to a dining and out of home experience. Apparently not. As we kind of found out from these surveys, it's more about the taste, the authenticity, and at the end of the day, the cost, of course. But I thought that was really interesting that they're willing to drive further, they're willing to wait longer, as long as the taste is there. And I think, that really highlights operators' quality is king. I think it's important to understand what our consumers want, like what diners are looking for in this day and age. But at the end of the day, you need to attract diners and you need to grow your businesses, right? We did do some research into marketing trends, what consumers are doing to find new dining establishments. Clint, could you kind of run us through some of those findings that might help business operators in attracting or retaining customers?
Yeah. One of the things that makes this a hard industry is you might have an amazing dish, but you can't escape the reality that you have to hire, and you're also maybe the bookkeeper, car mechanic, and marketer. So let's talk about marketing and ways that we can gain more customers. Of course, the best thing for a food business is to have return customers, but you're never going to get that if you don't get that first customer or that customer to the door the first time. By and large, if I printed a billboard on the freeway and could say anything I want to food business owners, I would say this: neglect your online presence at your peril. It is very, very crucial, and some of the data we got back shows just how crucial it is that food business owners embrace online promotion of their businesses. One of our salient data points from the survey of diners is that more than 3/4 of them will visit a food business's website before they dine in or order out. And of course, that number climbs when you add Yelp and Google Maps reviews and Reddit and other sources of research as well. In fact, 35% of our diners said that they were influenced by online reviews when they were choosing where to eat. 85% of diners are looking at the menu online first. So before even making a decision on whether they're going to or choosing between places, they are looking at your substance, and if you've got your wits about you, your style as well, your images and your video and other things that showcase, your amazing dishes as well. What it means in terms of a so what or impact on food business owners is You really do need to work on and improve your online presence wherever and however possible. Let's talk a little bit about if you have limited hours or limited ability, where you should put your focus. In terms of kind of the overall trend, we're seeing consumers and diners prefer a really kind of a direct first personal approach to their marketing or how they're marketed to. So channels that will allow you to directly reach customers are the ones that I would recommend the most. Of course, one of those channels that's the best at doing that is social media. I don't think that's the only option, but we'll touch on that briefly. It ranked as the top way that people are attracting new diners according to consumers. Second, we would say that, equally as important to that, and still very, very, very crucial, is word of mouth. How do we create more word of mouth for businesses and get more of their friends and family through the door? Your previous diners are, of course, always your best ambassadors. We want to leverage that as much as possible, including on social media. In terms of the platforms, though, when we look at social media like as a broad landscape, we see Facebook kind of run away as the number one choice. It's kind of interesting to us because there are newer platforms. There are more engaging or sexy or video heavy type platforms, but Facebook still outranks all of them, and probably because of the breadth that it has in terms of the user base. It's just very, very considerable. I would say Instagram is a close second, and if you look at the commonality between these two platforms, they're very visual platforms. So photography and video is really something to keep up on and put some energy into, because that really is going to be kind of your lead in terms of presenting potential customers with what you have that might attract them. Another way that we've looked at and seen some success with some of our food business owners is in event-based marketing. So especially if you're a caterer or like an event vendor, farmers market vendor, I just can't encourage people enough to try and get on site whenever possible. It does two things. One is you can move a lot of product by being on site in I'll call it, sometimes it's a less competitive atmosphere, depending on the number of people that are there as proprietors. I've also talked to a lot of people who have gotten loads of leads that way and found catering opportunities or what have you, just by virtue of having a normal customer come through that day when they were on site. There was an interesting note that we found when we were surveying the business owners, is that while social media is something we definitely recommend involving yourself more in, last year, we had a little bit more optimism around paid advertising than we do this year. About 2/3 of people from our recent survey are kind of unsure about what they're planning on spending when it comes to advertising in 2025. Only about 1/3 are saying they will absolutely spend more in 2025. This is quite different from last year, where most businesses said they plan on increasing their spend. Most likely is due to some uncertainty around the economy, but we just thought it was interesting because by most measures, the optimism needle had moved more considerably and in the positive direction, except in this instance. I'd really highly encourage food business owners to get into email marketing, capture emails from customers, use that to drive news and updates around maybe limited time or special dishes, or if you're going to be in a certain geographic area, alerting people to come out and see you, since you'll be in a more convenient place for them. In terms of promotions, we see varying levels of success. We asked the diners what would encourage you to try or return to a food business, and their responses were interesting. By far, discounts were the most effective way of getting diners to visit your business, according to our survey. We had about 54% of respondents ranking it as the most influential tool on their selection. Loyalty programs was second, with around 20%, ranking them most impactful. And over 50% indicated that they often or always participate in loyalty programs. And some of the point of sale or POS solutions that our food operators use, whether it's Clover, Toast, or Square, there's quite a few of them. Some of them have like built-in loyalty programs that you can kind of use and leverage. And if it is built in, I'd highly suggest that you leverage it. If you want to sign up for a different one because you don't prefer that one, I'd still highly suggest that you look into it and consider using it for your business. In terms of other things we can do to attract those kind of first-time customers and hopefully turn them into repeat customers, seasonal deals and timely deals, they just continue to inspire diners to try or return to a food business. About 2/3 of our diners acknowledge that daily food menus and deals like Taco Tuesdays or summer specials, those kinds of things will influence your dining decisions. Going back to that prior point, nearly half of food business owners not expecting to make changes to their menu I'd actually encourage you to rethink that and consider doing themed fusion limited time or limited duration special edition dishes, because those really can move the needle for some people. Last point, which is a little bit more of that cautious part of the optimism. We're seeing a lot of excitement around AI. Google and OpenAI and others have kind of entered the fray and created a feeding frenzy of sorts with AI. I will say that most of our food business owners are either not or unsure if they will implement AI into their business in 2025. It's about 80% of them that are either not planning on it or unsure if they will. Only about 13% say that they will do it. I understand the hesitancy there because this is kind of an industry that's still settling and maturing. And I would agree that in terms of it as an industry compared to other industries, it might feel like it has less opportunities to leverage AI. However, I would say that from my perspective, there are reasons to want to dabble in it or use it. And I think using it as an aid to social media, because you are primarily focused on running the business, manufacturing, cooking, preparing, presenting the food, et cetera. It can be a helpful tool in kind of shortcutting some of the work that needs to take place there. But yeah, that's kind of overall what we've seen in terms of marketing or industry trends, both from the diners' perspective on how they're choosing and from the food business owners operating on where they're choosing to put their marketing emphasis and if and whether they're planning on using AI at all.
I think the large takeaway that I would reshare with the audience is that direct approach, right? Again, you can blast a message and hope to get people in the door, but having those email marketing channels functioning, your web presence, obviously a huge one, social media, keeping those conversations going, loyalty programs. I think it's a global trend that personalization in marketing is key. AI can help with that. But when you own those channels, to Clint's point, you own those channels. And I think to build up those is really important. Back to the insurance side of things, what did we see across the board in insurance? Is we know insurance is important, but what's happening, to the food businesses? What should they be kind of keeping an eye out from a risk perspective, stuff like that?
Yeah, a couple of interesting points, a few surprises, a few unsurprising things. When we looked at the 2024 data compared to 2023, we are seeing an actual decrease in the number of insurance claims by about 4.5 points. We're not entirely certain what's behind that yet, but it's good news as food business owners become a little bit less risk prone. A surprising finding for us was that the types of claims changed a little bit. The most prevalent claim from last year was in this category called accident causing damage. So this would be damage to a third party, like a venue owner, customer, festival attendees, something along those lines. It falls under the heading of general liability category that Kyle was talking about at the top of our call. That was actually the number one category, and that was actually a little bit different than last year. Auto trailer, or automotive issues or incidents, theft, food spoilage, those are all kind of double digit in terms of their percent of making up claims. And then you've got single digits with, fire, weather, customer related claims, missed events, floods, things of that nature. Average payout for all claims filed was about $3,400. What I want to highlight here is that this is about 6 times the annual coverage cost of a base flip policy. And of course, this is just an average. So this is not the median. This is an overall average. We have some claims that will run into the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And if you're insured by flip, you have incident and occurrence and annual aggregate limits of $1 million and $2 million. You can go up to $3 million if you choose to. So you do have the risk for catastrophic loss. It's averaging out in the mid $3,000s range. In terms of the highest concentrations of claims, we're looking at California, Texas, and Florida. This is kind of unsurprising because these are generally high population states. These are also pretty warm states, so they're usually more apt to operate like a year-round outdoor market instead of moving indoors or having an off season, essentially. And then in terms of the categories where claims were filed, caterers, food trucks, food trailers, and farmers market vendors are kind of the top 4 categories. The majority of all insurance claims did result in a payout, which is great news for consumers. Insurance is one of those things that you don't want it, you don't want to buy it, you don't want to spend money on it, but when it comes time to make a claim, boy, are you glad you have it.
But just kind of wrapping up, in terms of a summary, I'm wondering, Clint, if you can kind of just give us what were your takeaways in this year's report? How are you feeling? How do you think your insured's feeling? That kind of thing.
I feel good, and I think that's a reflection of how everyone else is feeling by and large. There are reasons to be cautious about the optimism, and certainly question marks around some of the pricing stuff. Overall, the market's strong.
And with that, we wish everyone a very prosperous 2025. Thanks so much for joining us today.